Okay, got this 07 EC300. We're just changing the fork oil and getting ready for a Moab trip. Got the left leg done, or the right leg done rather. We're going to do the left leg. And I'm changing this every 20 hours at Les Tenias recommendation at LTR Racing. LT Racing. That's what the R stands for, racing. Duh. So, you know, I've been ignoring the Colorado OHV permit recommendations on their directions to make sure you peel all the old stickers off. I've been leaving the old stickers on, so they're like 3 deep now, and they don't fit out the bottom triple clamp without spreading it, so I've kind of shot myself in the foot there. So one thing I want to do before and I always forget this until I get the fork all the way off, is to keep this lower part snug, loosen the upper parts on the upper triple clamp, and go ahead and loosen the fork cap. Hopefully this will come into view here. So we've loosened these, kept one of these tight, and we'll just loosen that. That'll take care of that. Now we can pull the fork out. All right. This might not be graceful. It's probably not the best thing to do, but I'm going to wedge this open a little bit with the screwdriver just to help loosen it, help these slide through. Okay. So this fork, this Marzocchi 45 Shiver, a little bit different than, well, different in a lot of ways than the Showa and the KYB. So the manuals you can find all over the internet for this 45mm Shiver. Just print them out and follow the directions. It's real easy. Just have to have a couple 19mm wrenches. I don't have 2 open 19mm wrenches. Well, I do have one in the truck or somewhere, but I don't have one. I don't have 2 in the garage here. So I'm just going to use the open 19mm through the spring, and then just use this to loosen the top of the fork cap. You'll see in a second here. I'm looking for my screwdriver I just used. So before we go twisting on all these, I should have backed off the compression and the rebound to 0. And I've already counted these on the other fork, so I know what they are. Otherwise, you'd want to count them and make sure you put them back to where you had them, so your suspension won't be too far off. Okay. And okay, so this is where the 19mm comes in. Just wedge it through the fork spring here. It's a little tight. Let's try it this way. There we go. That should be enough. And then, it's not really good ergonomics there. Let's try it like this. Okay, so that's got that loose. We'll just keep this one on down here, and we'll just pay attention to the order that all this comes apart in here. This upper fork cap has a little plastic whatever that keeps the spring from contacting the aluminum there, and helps keep the spring centered. So we'll just go ahead and pull the spring out. Try to keep everything clean as you can. Do keep everything clean as you can. The dampener rod will fall out when you invert it for sure. Just Can't quite grab it with these wet gloves. We'll go ahead and pull it out so it doesn't fall out to the dirty oil. There's another round plastic bushing about that tall that's down inside. It'll fall out in there when I turn the fork over to drain it. There it is. So we'll just let this expand. We'll catch the end of the, you know what, let's use this side. Keep it up a little bit higher here. Like a fool, I threw away my jaw vise pads a long time ago, thinking I'll never use those for anything. Okay, so now we'll just run this through its stroke a few times. Just help the oil drain out. So in this, on less tenuous recommendation, I'm using ATF, Dexron 3, Dexron 4, and I'm changing it every 20 hours. That helps to keep trash. His thoughts were it would help keep the particulate suspended better for a fork oil change. What would probably be ideal is to ride it for a few minutes, put the suspension through its stroke and several times, jump it a few times, and then pull it in and drain both forks. So it would probably get help get the trash out a lot better. So, all right, we'll let that drain for a few minutes. While it's draining, we're going to wipe everything off with clean towels, clean gloves, and all that when I go to put it back together so no trash gets inside. While we're doing that, this is my fork oil height setter. This is back when I was poor, riding YZFs in the early days of the 2000s. I couldn't afford the fork tool. I'm not even sure one existed. Maybe it did. I just either couldn't afford it or couldn't find one or whatever. Kind of made my own. And this is just a piece of brass rod, I guess, I got from one of the hardware stores. A little piece of metal, doesn't have to be that thick. I drilled a hole in that just slides up and down. And then this little clip here that you can see I can slide up and down. Actually, it doesn't slide up at all. So if you need to move it up here, you have to slide it off, slide it back on this end, and then set your fork oil height. And then I just use a little cheap caliper to set it. I'm setting these at 130 millimeters. So that's 130 right there. And then we'll just use that to set that distance right there. And that's my fork height. And then I'll drop this on, set this on top of the fork tube like that. I've got a little, what we call in the medical field, a Toomey syringe with a, and then you can just, I'm sure you can use a vacuum pump for brake fluid and that kind of thing, whatever. And then I just put a little piece of tubing on and safety wired it just to give it a pretty good seal. And then vacuum it down, and when air bubbles start to come out, be sucking pure fluid first, and then when air bubbles start to come out, that's my fork oil set height. It's perfect at 130. So I'm putting 600 cc's of fluid in on the first fork leg, on the right one that I did just a few minutes ago. And 600 cc's filled it up, and I sucked off just about, what is that, 10 milliliters, maybe 15. So 600 was just about perfect for that leg. We'll see how this one does. Now the fork oil height needs to be set according to the Marzocchi manual with all of the parts out. The spring out, the dampener rod, if that's what that's called. I can't remember what this aluminum piece is. That's the dampener rod, and then this out. So at least those three things out. And the upper stanchion, is that the right word? I'm talking like I know what I'm doing, but I really don't know words. And ideally, this would be ideal to let this drain for a couple hours. The upper stanchion all the way down, like this, where it's all the way down in the stroke. So you don't want it up here, you don't want it all the way up. That's where the Marzocchi manual says to set the fork oil height. Just like that. So now, we'll just go ahead and do this real quick. So I'm going to put 500 in first. What do we ever do without ratio rights? We might have just enough. There's 500. Oh, good shot. I was changing this just based on volume of how much I drained out, and I'm not sure that's the best idea after I compared the fork legs of how much I drained out and when I was draining out, 50 cc's difference in each fork leg, and I thought, wow, after doing that a couple times I could be way off in my volumes of my fork legs. So setting the fork oil height still ideal over changing it by volume. I'll just do this a couple times to make sure all the air's out. And that's 500. I need to put another 100 in. And I think that's actually what the manual says. Put 600 in and then set the fork oil height. Their recommendations are between 110 and 130 millimeters for the fork oil height. That's pretty full there. We'll just run the stanchion up and down once. Hear the bubbles. Do this one more time here. Okay. So just drop this down, let it sit right there on the fork tube, at the top of the fork tube, and then we'll start sucking. Here comes the fluid. I don't know if you can see it. Keep some good vacuum on it. I think it's Motion Pro that makes an actual tool that's all calibrated on the side of the tube that you put inside the fork, so it's much more commercialized and much less redneck. And I'd probably buy one now, but I have this and it works. So either I've still got a lot of air in it, or this fork leg was pretty full compared to the other one after draining it. I might let this fork sit overnight and just recheck it and see if it settles. Of course, if I think I got all the air out, that shouldn't be an issue. Okay, now air bubbles are starting to come through the tubing there. There we have it, 130 millimeters. Squirt the rest of this back in here. I won't drag you through retorquing the upper and lower triple clamps. Les's recommendation to me was because of the thin-walled 45 millimeter Marzocchis that GASGAS had custom fit for these, I don't know what all years, but this 07 EC300 was one of them. This part of the fork tube was pretty thin, and if you torque these to the factory specs, all three of them, it can bind, it actually can decrease the inner circumference of the part of the fork tube right here, so that when the lower fork leg comes up, it accelerates the wear. So that's what he was worried about when I sent my forks to him, and he checked them out. He said to make sure to torque these to the specifications that he recommended. And that was factory spec up here, and then down here to set this middle one to 11 foot-pounds, and then the upper and lower one here to just a hand snug. So he said leave it at that. That way it won't over torque this lower one and cause binding when that lower fork leg comes up through the upper fork tube. So okay. Hear a few bubbles there. Just do this one more time. Okay, got a little bit of fluid coming through there. But that feels pretty good. So just get this back together. It's a little bit awkward. I want to wipe these things off real quick first. Just make sure there's no extra dust or dirt. Reintroducing. Okay. I'll pull this up. Try to hold it in place right there. Now we'll have to work this inner part back up so we can actually thread the fork cap on. There we go. Hold it right there, and probably sticking this wrench on here will allow us to hopefully hold it still enough. Don't want to cross thread this, so make sure that it threads up easy. It's looking pretty good right there. Okay. And I'm just going to hand snug this. Okay, and then the key here is to not try to tighten it until you have it clamped in the lower pinch bolts of the lower triple clamp. Leave the upper ones loose, the upper triple clamp bolts loose. Tighten this down the rest of the way. And once you have that tight, go ahead and torque the lower ones and torque the upper ones. So we'll get it close here. Okay, and that's it. So I typically have pulled both my fork legs off and done both of them at the same time and put them both back on. Not doing that anymore because there's so many things that I mess up trying to put it back together. Either I leave out the tugger, or I leave out something else, or I leave this part off and it's laying on the ground. I get the fork all back together, put the wheel back on, and there's no way to get this fork guard off because it's a full wraparound fork guard. So it's just one of those things. And then the other thing is the fork height. Inside there's a line, and I'm just setting mine where that line is just barely visible right here above the upper triple clamp. That way I can just compare. That way if I forget, oh shoot, where did I have these? I'll be able to get them right back on. Okay, so we'll just slide this back in. Again, we'll torque these uppers to 15. Well, first we'll tighten this lower one, leave these loose. We'll tighten the fork cap the rest of the way just to snug it up. It doesn't need to be super tight, just snug, hand snug. And then we'll torque these to 15 foot-pounds. We'll back that one off. We'll torque the middle one to 11 foot-pounds, and then just hand snug these outer ones. Okay, and that's fork happiness for these 45 Marzocchi Shivers.